Hi guys, thanks for tuning in again. Hope you're enjoying the videos so far. In this episode I'm going to try and get the front end suspension and all the hubs sort of fitted onto the front subframe, so we'll crack on with that. Let's get going. Okay guys, so a little update really from the last video. The fuel cell's off being fabricated at the moment. They've managed to add on the two side panels onto the actual end of the fuel cell that I had already. Got it back last night, just quickly popped it in the car. Problem is that it actually fouls on the suspension, which is really annoying. So I basically went off the same dimensions that there are on a standard fuel tank, so standard depth back into the front subframe. It's about half the height, so really it shouldn't interfere at all with actually the suspension that runs in behind. Turns out that from when the Z cars went into liquidation and then got bought out again, they changed the shock supplier. So now they use adjustable gas shocks on the front, and unfortunately they're slightly wider than the standard shocks that you used to use on a kit. So basically it fouls the standard fuel tank and therefore sort of fouls my fuel tank. So I just dropped it back up to the fabricators and they're going to notch like a 25mm off each back corner and just chamfer it in on a bit of an angle, parallel to sort of the angle of where the shocks run. That'll give it plenty of clearance then, a good sort of 15mm clearance, because it did fit, but it was about 5mm clearance, and I'm just not happy with that little clearance with suspension knocking around there with all that fuel. So I'm just going to start now on getting the front subframe built up a bit more, get the front shocks on, wishbones, etc., and all the camber adjusters, get all that bolted onto the car. Then hopefully when the fuel cell gets back in, I can get the front wheels on. Then that means then I can lift at the back of the car and start to get the engine in to fabricate up the rest of the parts that I need to in the back, like the charge cooler, etc., and finish off the front end. So yeah, we'll just basically make a start and get this front end sort of knocked up together a little bit more. As you can see, I'm surrounded by nuts and bolts. Basically went through a list of bits that were missing from the kit. As I mentioned before, I got my kit actually when Z cars went to liquidation the first time round. So basically got a load of nuts and bolts that I definitely need in this box just here. This is also for like the shifters, etc., that I've all measured and specifically got, and all the rest of this is just general nuts and bolts I've bought. All the actual bits here for sort of the actual hub, which is obviously specially machined out to obviously have the drive shaft sort of blanked out. That's all sort of comes from Z cars themselves. It's got Wilwood grooved and vented discs on the front. All of these fixings that are on here all came as part of the kit really. So sort of standard nuts and bolts and top hats in there. I've not tightened them all up yet. As you can see, it's just really just to get it sat in place for the time being. I have ordered up proper nuts and bolts because, again, as I said, these are the shocks that the new sort of Z cars guys basically use them for adjustable gas. I know it's upside down as well. It's just really just to get it in for the length for now. So yeah, so they're not obviously the bolts I'll be using, but it's really just to hold it all in place for now, just so I can get an idea of clearances. And as I said, the fuel cell did fit really nicely in here. As I said, a standard fuel tank goes onto basically flush on here, and as you can see, when you're actually above it directly, it's as tight as a gnat's cock basically for clearance. There's literally, well, as you can see here, this is where the fuel tank actually finishes here, and then the actual side supports just bracket onto here. So you can see it's literally the gap between here and here is all that there was. So that's I've basically just cut off the back corner. So instead of it being obviously right angle like this, as much as you can do a right angle with your hand, it's going to be more sort of angled parallel to it like this, just to give it that sort of clearance. So it sort of come like that. So yeah, so really just trying to get this front end on. As I said, it's not the actual bolts I'll be using, but equally in this dry fit, I don't really want to be buggering them all up really. So I'm just going to sort of look to get the left hand side all put onto the car now. So as I said, I've had this all pre-assembled before, so I'm just going to get all that bolted on now. We'll try again then. Main thing is I just don't want to be levering on this rose joint. That's the main thing of my concern. Want to make sure that I don't knock that and damage the actual bearing itself or the joint. I'm just going to make sure it's sat back over tight to the left as I can quickly, but other than that, that's the only sort of levering I'm going to actually do on the joint itself. So just get it in there, sort of started, and just keep knocking it in, and make sure you don't knock it all the way through. Right, that looks way through. So, why not on there? So hopefully my impact gun will be here tomorrow, and I'll just wind all these up. Some of these are actually done up to correct torques, like this one. This one's all torqued up okay. It's not quite over right. Once these bushes go in and start, they're generally not too bad. It's just getting them in and started. There we are. That's in. And just use the screwdriver just to line. Little tip I learned. Just put it in through the hole on the back side, hold it on, and that way it won't fall through. I just should have listened to my advice on the last one, shouldn't I? And hopefully line it up. There we are. And it's through. Pop those on. These are all torqued up, if I remember rightly, to 50 pounds-feet, but I could be wrong because I literally haven't built those up before. It's got to be 18 months since I actually last built up this front subframe, but I believe that's what it was back then. I could very well be wrong. So that's that all on. Just got to get the actual discs quickly on there now, so I'll do that next. Okay, so that's just loosely on there. Don't tighten up too much more because I don't want this top bracket here going on the disc. So next is just to get the shock lined up and put that on. Okay, so that's the front end set up on both sides now. Everything's sort of bolted in, so I'll go just torque it all back up tomorrow. I'm going to go full torque, just probably 80% of what they should be, just so it's just all sat there, tightened up and all sort of feeling as it should feel really. So yeah, so quite happy with that for tonight's work. I'll leave it at that. I'm just going to sort out these nuts and bolts. I've got a load of bins up there on the wall which I need to label up to put them in. So I'll give that a rest tonight. Is, well, next of all is to get this gearbox dismantled down here and try and get the quaife box all put together. That's gonna be the next job. Brother-in-law's coming over on Thursday evening to come and help me do that, hopefully. So that's the plan. Hopefully my impact gun will be here because it's just so much quicker and easier to take all that apart. So that's the plan of action for that really. Once that's done, I can get it bolted onto the engine. Now I've got the front end set up, I can get the wheels on. Makes it, as I said, much easier for lifting up, wheeling in and out the garage, and I can get the engine block in at the back, and as I said earlier, get all the other brackets fabricated. Hopefully fuel cell should only be a couple of days getting that back in. I can finish making the brackets up for that. Eagle-eyed viewers will see here the tank straps I've got here. So I went actually away from the actual brackets, actually on the fuel cell itself, because basically it's just not a good idea because it can just rip through and then you've got a fuel tank flying. Although it is pretty well cradled in here, these straps will be better, so I can work out once I get the fuel cell back. Those brackets all to make up, which I've got all the rubber to insulate it all there. So that's it for now really. Thanks for keeping up to date with all the videos and that. I hope you're enjoying it all. Again, please like and subscribe to the channel. Search K20 Charge Mini on Instagram and Facebook to also follow those pages if you're up for it. And yeah, again, please feel free to make your comments. I have some great sort of questions asked. Hopefully I've answered them in a sensible manner and you sort of get where I'm coming from with it, and hopefully the videos explain a little bit more what I'm on about. So again, thanks for tuning in guys, and see you on the next one.